Chris, drafting, geology, operations, and then drilling. How does one go down that path, and how do you get into the oil industry?
That's a great question, and it's an interesting pathway indeed. I left school at the end of year 11, so never graduated high school, and I went straight into studying photography. And whilst I was at the technical college, there was a handwritten note for a job looking for a junior photographer at a company called Wappet, which I'd never heard of. And at the ripe old age of 17, I applied and got the job. Found out then it wasn't a junior photographer job, but it was in graphics in drafting. So that's using industrial size cameras to enlarge and reduce maps that the geologists made and helping them prepare reports and stuff like that. So that was kind of my foray into the oil business. And yeah, it was a very long journey to get where I am now, but a very interesting one.
How did you end up in drilling then?
So I probably took the longest pathway you could possibly imagine. So from the drafting department, I made really good friends with the geologists because they were the youngest people in the company and wanted to party, so I kind of hung out with them quite a bit. And they convinced me to go back and get my mature age matriculation and go to uni and study geology because I was actually quite fascinated by all the maps and things that I was working with in the drafting department. So a couple of them helped me sort of learn physics and maths and become good at that and helped me get into uni. And then I transferred to geology as a technical assistant into the ops geology group, so that was dealing with the rigs. And from there, whilst I was doing my degree, they sort of let me go out to the rig as a well site geo or a trainee well site geo and do some logging. And it was kind of the fun time of drilling back when directional drilling started, horizontal drilling. So it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed the rigs a lot and kind of thought actually being a drilling guy would be rather cool. And so eventually I ended up with Chevron in PNG when I left Wappet for a year, and that was my first change into a drilling department. So I was helping them build their management system up there, and the company that had the software for that had a link to Labrador in Perth, and they said, once you've finished here in New Guinea, do you want to chat to these guys at Labrador? So I did that, got a job with Labrador, and they quite happily sort of turned me into a drilling engineer. So it was a very long path to get here, but one that I have zero regrets taking.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt this show and I really hope you're enjoying it. One thing I'm going to ask you, if you're listening to it and you're not liking, following or subscribing to it, could I ask a massive favour that you do? It really helps the show, it helps me bring in more people and it helps me get more stories out there, which in favour brings more stories back in. Let's get back to it. That's the main thing. You've held quite a few roles, engineer, superintendent. How much has each step kind of changed your perspective on what makes a decent operation?
I think the one that's made the biggest impact on me has actually been the drilling supervisor offshore. It's where you really get to understand where your engineering ends up and what the people on the rig have to do, the safety implications of what you've asked them to do, the equipment involved, whether it's easy to do or not easy to do. So spending those few years on the rig as a drilling supervisor really, I think, made me a much better drilling engineer. And also being a drilling engineer and then becoming superintendent's not necessarily a normal path because most people that are superintendents have come up through the rig sort of phases. But I think that really helped me as well because I was able to make operational decisions with an engineering mind, but also having had that field experience as well. So I think that was probably the best thing I ever did for my career.
Do you think there's big misconceptions about what drilling engineers do?
I do. I think when you tell someone you're a drilling engineer, they kind of go, what? So yeah, once you explain what you do, it becomes a little bit clearer. And nowadays, actually, I'm teaching some P&A courses for a local association here. And as part of that, I teach people how we design wells and drill them because you need to know that in order to abandon them. And they're quite interested to know the engineering and science behind how we actually drill a well. Because as I say, it's more than just a hole in the ground. So
Was it like going from a super major and, over in Papua New Guinea and then going to probably a smaller company, I assume, considering the Chevron's probably the second or third biggest, Labrador? How much has things changed?
They change a lot. In fact, as much as I enjoyed my time at Chevron and Whoppet, well, Whoppet became Chevron in Australia, so I was sort of working for a super major there as well. The thing I love about Labrador is the diversity of what we see and what we do. We work with so many different management systems, be they for small companies or big companies, and it's really nice to see how different companies operate. I think when you're in a super major for a long time, you just kind of get stuck in the way they do their business. There's a lot of politics in the background. There's lots of big corporate stuff that goes on. And what I love about this role is I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. We're doing technical work here. We're focused on a product for a client, and that's, from a career perspective, so much more refreshing than wading through all the non-technical stuff that comes with working for a super major.
What's it like working in Papua New Guinea?
Very interesting. I went up there about 3 months after they had, I think it was an attempted coup. So there were mercenaries just leaving PNG as I was arriving. So it was very interesting. I mean, the fact I was being paid to fly in a helicopter and fly around PNG just blew my mind, because it's an amazing country, but it's also a very dangerous place. Every hitch I was up there, we would either get a rig hijacked or a helicopter hijacked, or, there was some sort of unrest. We had armed guards at the camp. You'd get people just appear out of the jungle in bare feet and effectively a loincloth and a machete. It was just the most surreal experience, but an absolutely amazing country, and the people that are there are fantastic, really, really nice people. I would not want to cross them, but when you're working with them and dealing with them every day, they're just lovely people.
I take it was all onshore drilling, was it there?
Yeah, all onshore and incredibly difficult drilling. We would have a rig on location for best part of a year drilling one well. So lots of geological issues. You've got formations that have folded over onto themselves, so you're drilling them one way and then you're drilling them in reverse again. All the rigs are mobilised by helicopter, so everything is flown in by a Chinook. So just moving the rig takes forever. That takes like a month. Building a location can take you 6 months, because you start by lowering a person with a chainsaw in on the end of a helicopter winch. They chop some trees down, then you helicopter in a bulldozer in parts, and you've got to build it. And then that just goes around in circles, just knocking the top off a mountain to build the location. And then you've got to fly the rig in piece by piece. And, they can only fly the load, I think, like 50 kilometres fully laden, and then they've got to drop the load off, refuel, and then move it again. So it's quite the process to work up there. And there's some of the rigs, there's no roads to them, so it's just a helicopter in and out. And because you're in the highlands, you're working in the clouds, so you can go 28 days without seeing the sun. There are days where you just can't get a helicopter off the ground.
There must be incredibly good wells for all this effort to get into them, are they?
Massive wells. So Exxon's still drilling up there, or were drilling up there, and have been for a long time. So there's some pretty good production comes out of them, but some high dollar investment going into it.
So you spent time offshore as well, jackups, Samis. Which environment do you prefer, onshore or offshore?
I think I prefer offshore. Not to say there's anything wrong with onshore, but offshore, I don't know, just has that nicer part about it. You get to see the whales, you get to see sharks and the wildlife, and it is something completely unique that not too many people get to go to work in a helicopter and work out in the ocean off Broome or off Karratha or Exmouth, which are, Karratha not really a tourist hotspot, but Exmouth and Broome is. So, it's pretty special to be able to do that sort of stuff.
If you look back in your time at the moment, what's the turning point in your career?
I think leaving Wappet and taking up that position with Chevron in PNG, that sort of pivoted me out of geology into drilling and gave me that experience. It was quite surreal when I came back to Perth and joined Labrador and put PNG on my CV. Suddenly, I was a little bit more popular than I was before, because people enjoyed the fact I had a bit of international experience, even though I thought it was irrelevant for the jobs I was going for, but other people thought it was important. So I think that was the turning point, and joining a company that was working for so many different operators, doing so many different things, really sort of exposed me to a lot of different companies, different working regimes, things like that.
So obviously the elephant in the room, the Montara incident, Australia's biggest oil spill. For those that might not be aware of it, I wasn't actually that aware of it until I did some digging a few months back with regards to it. What happened there?
Well, I think what happened has been fairly well documented by the Commission of Inquiry, but and I'm giving a presentation on this at the IWCF conference next month, so I don't want to give too many spoilers away. But a lot of things.
This will probably be released after that anyway, so I'll leave it out.
But it's definitely one of those Swiss cheese things where everything lined up against us, and part of it was around the fact that we changed our program partway through. We were supposed to be drilling on a platform that already had topsides on it. For whatever reason, they couldn't be installed, so we had to change the plan to suspend the wells. Somebody didn't install a corrosion cap on one of the wells, so when we went back, it was all corroded, so we had to clean that up. And in order to clean it up, we had to remove the other corrosion cap. We checked for pressure, did all that sort of stuff, but for whatever reason, that corrosion cap never went back on after we cleaned the threads. That happened to be the same well that had a wet shoe. The wet shoe, in my opinion, wasn't reported properly during the initial drilling, and so those things just lined up and we ended up losing the well. So yeah, just a very, very unfortunate incident.
And what was did you have involvement after the actual blowout, so to speak?
Yeah, pretty much. I was the person that received the call from the rig. The morning it happened, they called me to say they'd had a spill into the water from one of the wells. Gas alarms had gone off. It had stopped flowing at that point, so we were trying to get a packer in there. And then, by the time I'd raised the IMT and notified the regulators, I had another call from the rig to say the gas alarms were going off and the well was flowing. So, it was just evacuate the rig and go. And then it was pretty much straight on to the incident command team from that point of view, and stayed on that for the next 70-odd days whilst we planned and executed the relief well and finally got the well killed and secured. So stayed with it throughout that entire time, and then obviously the ensuing investigation, the Commission of Inquiry, so a lot of time preparing for that. And then, 3 days on the stand at the Commission.
How was that?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. 3 days of being absolutely grilled. I think it's fair to say our lawyers said it was nothing short of what you would get in a murder investigation. The way we were questioned and the way we were sort of treated, if you like. You never knew what question was coming next. So it was brutal. You weren't allowed to talk to the lawyers. You weren't allowed to talk to anybody that you'd worked with. Outside the courtroom at lunchtime, there was a little box. Inside the box was a meal and a yogurt and an apple. And I nicknamed that the unhappy meal because if you were getting that, you weren't in a good space. It was a pretty lonely experience, to be honest.
How much do you think it changed the way in which you think about, risk, leadership in high pressure environments?
Oh, it's changed it a lot. I definitely look at risk completely different to a lot of people. I always tell young engineers, how are you going to explain that to the judge? if they're recommending a change, and think about things from that perspective. How would you justify that position? The documentation that you've got, how would that hold up in court? Because that's all the sort of stuff that was being thrown at us, was around documentation and decisions we made and how we document decisions and things like that. So, all of that is stuff that I bring to work every day.
You've obviously spoken about it to companies and used it like during emergency response trainings. But how do people react to it when you're dealing and speaking about the reality of being in the middle of a major incident?
Yeah, I've been quite surprised by the feedback that it really hits home for people, because I talk about it from my experience. Starts off with this is the day my life changed. And I talk about, I put up a photo of the lifeboats being lowered from the rig. And that's people running for their lives, literally running for their lives. And I've got friends in those lifeboats. And, when you think about it in the context of that's your little incident on day one, by day two, it's on the front page in the newspaper. It's, you're on the news headlines globally. Your kids go to school and, parents are talking about it, kids are talking about it. So it's affecting them. You feel horrible. You know that everyone's watching you, and they probably aren't. They probably don't know me from a bar of soap, but that's what it feels like. And you're living that every single day. We're at the front page of the news for the best part of 79 days or something. So it's a pretty brutal experience, and that's what I try and get across to people, that if you've got an incident going on, this is the sort of pressure you're going to be under. You won't be wearing your logoed shirts to work anymore, because you won't want people to see that you work for that company that's done that. And it can reach home as well. So it can be quite a stressful experience. Sorry, my lights have gone out.
No, that's all right. What do you think's the biggest lessons the industry still hasn't learned from Montara?
I think there's an untold story about the backstory, the things the Commission didn't even get to. I mean, they got to some pretty core results in what they did, but there's another backstory to that, which, it's all about the change of plans, the timelines around that, what we had to deal with. That's what industry needs to learn. When you look at risk, it's not necessarily decisions made on the rig. Yeah, there certainly might have been decisions we could have made that would have prevented that incident from occurring. But there were other corporate decisions made that somehow put us in that position. And I think it's good for executives to reflect, to go that little bit deeper on those sorts of incidents and understand those, to help guide them really in some of the decisions that they make corporately. So, I would like industry to learn a little bit more about that. And I'm always happy to talk about it. Certain aspects of it for sure.
Obviously, you've seen quite a lot of change, both technology, culture, and even the public perception. What's been the most notable shift in drilling operations over the years?
That's a tough question, because there's quite a lot to that. Culturally, obviously, we're an industry that's hated now, which is unfortunate. People don't understand what they get out of our industry. Had to miss the point, but I can get dragged down a rabbit hole with that. But I think that's bitterly disappointing, and that is halting progress in our industry. We see it now. There's lots of activism that's preventing work from going ahead, which is unfortunate. The other thing I've seen is people don't want to come into the industry anymore, and that's partly due to the messaging from activists. It's also partly due to the way we treat people. The minute we have a downturn, we fire everybody, and then act surprised when they don't want to come back. So that doesn't help. So we're not bringing enough younger people in to replace people like me that are, moving out in the next decade. So that's going to hurt the industry, I think, in the long run. And also I've seen attitudes change. So I chair something here in Australia called Drill Safe, which has been going, we're celebrating 25 years in December. And it's been part of my corporate calendar for that 25 years. Once a quarter, there's a free safety session and people just present safety shares, which was beginning of my career. It was a do not miss event. And now I see no young people in the audience anymore. I'm getting fewer and fewer drilling managers showing up. But what is really disappointing is companies aren't sharing the incidents because it's all tied up with the lawyers. And it's very difficult to get companies to share that. But, how are we supposed to prevent major incidents if we don't share them? So it's kind of a vicious circle. And it's a shame the industry's gone that way because DrillSafe has presented some fantastic safety shares. And one story I like telling people is I went to one presentation, I took down some notes of a model number of some equipment that had failed and caused a major incident. I got back to the office, called the rig and said, do we have this bit of kit on the rig? And sure enough, we did. So I was able to isolate it and get it off the rig to make sure we didn't have an incident. That's the power of these presentations, and we're just not getting the feedstock that we used to with those anymore. So
why do you think that?
Really disappointing.
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think they are? Well, I'm not going to say covered up because that's obviously probably not the right word. But why do you think they are keeping more of these to themselves?
It's purely legal stuff. They just don't want to out there, and I get that. I do. It's I don't say that we announce it's Chatham House rules at DrillSafe, but everybody knows why it's on. The regulator's there, so they know about the incidents anyway. They want people to be talking about the incidents, to be honest with you. They're as frustrated about it as I am, but can't fight City Hall.
It seems like a little bit of a step back, though, with that mindset's kind of crawling in as well, obviously, because of early days, especially in the UK, and I imagine it's worldwide, a lot of it was covered up, so to speak. It's not exactly a great advertisement for the industry if things like that are happening again. But like yourself, I do understand, at the end of the day, all these companies are run by shareholders, and bad news unfortunately makes the share price take a dip.
Yeah, sadly it does, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we try and anonymise it as much as we can, but people can usually put two and two together.
And work out who it is, yeah. There's a lot of talk about the next generation of drillers, engineers. What advice would you give to someone who's coming into this industry?
The best advice I can give them is to remain technical for as long as possible, because you'll always stay busy when you're technical. As you move up the ladder, there's fewer and fewer positions, and you get further and further away from being technical, so it's harder to come back. And spend as much time in the field as you can. That's where you're going to learn a lot about how your engineering matters. It helps you become a better engineer. You can design better programs, design better wells, and become more efficient and safer. So those are probably the two best things I can say.
When you run emergency response exercises now, what's the one thing you wish people understood better about a crisis situation?
Well, I always emphasise it's all about people, and deal with the people side of things first. So I always try and test that component of it. Are they focused on getting the people off the rig and out of danger, or are they focused on stopping the oil spill or, preventing the rig from sinking? So it's all about people. The biggest takeaway from Montara, and I can't say this often enough, the way that the operator handled that incident was outstanding. And every lesson I learned from what they did, I've taken to every single company I worked for, and it was about the people. We got the people off quickly. We looked after them. We got them counselling. We got them clothing. We got them home quickly. And you can't underestimate how much effort that takes. And taking that effort away from what you think is, we've got to stop the oil spill. No, we've got to protect the people first. Get them to a safe place, and then we can deal with the rest of it.
Looking ahead, although it's quite difficult with the kind of climate that this industry's in, what does excite you about where it's heading? whether it's, technology, safety, or just the opportunity in it? I know it's quite a difficult question to answer, especially over this side of the world. I think a lot of people would probably refuse to move on to the next question.
No, there's lots that excites me, and I think a couple of those aspects, some of the new rigs coming through are amazing. Hands-free rigs that we've got down here in Australia now from Europe, absolutely unbelievable. I'd love to be out there working on one of those. So I think that's great. That's making the industry a lot safer and a lot quicker too, because there's a lot of offline capability on those. So that's pretty cool. I think the decom space is pretty interesting. So for me as an engineer, there's nothing I love more than doing a lot of detective work and trying to work out the riddles and the little bits of paperwork that you find on an old well and trying to piece it all together and work out what the hell actually happened 30 years ago so that you can then go and safely abandon the well. I love that stuff. That's pretty exciting. And to be honest, all the easy oil is gone. So the stuff we're looking for now is sort of HPHT, deep water. It's a really challenging environments that we've got to work in and challenging regulatory regimes and things like that. So it's about challenging the way we've always done things and taking it to the next level. So, yeah, that sort of stuff really excites me.
Well, at least you found a silver lining in what is a bit of a grey cloud, unfortunately. I don't know enough about kind of the state of the way things are in Australia, but I know in the UK we've got a quite important couple of months coming up. But why do you think it's gone this way? Why especially Australia is such a massive mining country in terms of, whether it be, FIFO onshore or your oil and gas offshore. And I mean, you literally built majority of your economy on the back of it. Why is this narrative changed?
Well, it's on the back of activism. That's slowed down a couple of projects. Obviously, Barossa with Santos took the first hit, and then all the EPs were pulled until that got resolved. And then the outcome of that is, a lot more stakeholder engagement, which is time consuming. Not that that's a bad thing. It's a great thing because communities are now getting a bit more educated on what we do, which is great. But that process has added to the timeline. The other big hit we've taken is around seismic and the negative aspects that are portrayed around seismic. And seismic is the beginning of that exploration hopper. If you don't do seismic, you don't find new prospects. You don't find new prospects or exploration opportunities, there's no development. So, if you put a small dent in that timetable, it puts a massive delay on the back end of development. So, and that has really hurt us here in Australia. We're getting past it slowly, but it really has taken its toll down here. And that is obviously reflected in investment down here as well.
It is a shame. Whenever you go at the moment, apart from obviously the likes of America, which seem to obviously they're drill baby drill at the moment, but even then I know they've got their issues over there. But yeah, I often think how long it is before people kind of just maybe switch the narrative back and go, oh, you know what? Especially here in the UK, I mean, our energy prices, I don't think they're anywhere near as bad over in Australia, but our energy prices are taking a hit. I chatted with someone yesterday where I kind of just said, at the end of the day, just your average Joe just wants cheaper energy at the end of the day, and the way that we're going about it now is not the right way to go for your average family, is it really?
No, it's not, and it's unfortunate. We've got two states in Australia that are quite anti-oil and gas, and it's unfortunate because they've got some reserves that could certainly ease the burden on their energy pricing, but it's just a massive struggle, unfortunately, to sort of get it to that stage. So, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Looking back on your career, what's the proudest moment that stands out?
Surviving Montara, I think, because to be honest, I never thought I'd work again after that. I thought, once you've been involved in one of those incidents, there'd be a black mark against your name. But I came out of it. I don't know what I did to sort of show trust to people, but people trusted me. As soon as I was clear of the Commission of Inquiry, I was hired for a job, and there were limitations on what I could do, and I understood that, but people trusted me, and so I don't know, something happened there. I survived it. I'm sharing the lessons. I'm making sure that it never happens again, and I think that for me was an unfortunate incident, but I've come out the other side okay, largely.
But to be fair, it's a good thing well, it's not a good thing, but it shows something on your CV at the end of the day that you survived something like that. So if anything, you look more employable, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.